Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wolfe Pit. I haven't done an actual cooking video in quite a while, so we're way overdue for one. So to make up for lost time, today I'm doing a no-trim smoked brisket. And when I say no trim, I mean no trim. You take it right out of the cryovac, you pat it dry with paper towels, and then you rub it and you smoke it. This will be the third time I've done a no-trim brisket, and to be honest, I like the brisket more and more each time I do one. But with this brisket, you got to keep in mind, it's going to be an eating brisket, not a competition brisket. So if you're looking for a pretty perfect brisket, you're not going to see it in this video. But what you will see is a mighty fine, moist, tender, and very delicious brisket that looks like a red-headed stepchild.
Ah! Boogeyman!
So let's get started with this almost 14-pound whole choice brisket. I found this brisket in my local grocery store for a decent price compared to the prices I've seen on briskets lately. So all we did was pull the brisket out of the cryovac and we pat it dry with paper towels. Now we're going to continue to kiss the brisket. And what that means is keep it simple, stupid. And we're going to season liberally with 2 parts black pepper and 1 part kosher salt. That's how I like the salt and pepper blend, but you can adjust yours accordingly to suit your taste. And don't be afraid to over-season the brisket. It's a big piece of meat to begin with. And since we're not trimming the fat side, we're only seasoning the meat side of the brisket. Now we have the meat side liberally seasoned and the fat side as bare as a baby's bottom. Now we put the brisket in the fridge overnight. But you can also put it right on the smoker. It's not necessary to put it in the fridge overnight. I'm cooking this brisket on Gorilla Grill's OG pellet cooker using hickory pellets. Now if you can cook in your oven, you can cook on the OG. Just turn it on and set your temperature, and that's it. Well, there's one more thing you can do. This OG has the Alpha Dual Mode Controller. Mode 1 is the typical pellet grill PID controller, which gives you rock solid steady temperatures, but the PID is notorious for not producing a lot of smoke or smoke flavor. But then you have Mode 2, which is what I'm using today, and that's the Pro Controller, which will vary the feed rate of the pellets, which creates small temperature swings, which mimics how a real wood fire burns. And therefore, it gives you more smoke and more smoke flavor. So we set the temperature to 250 degrees and change to Mode 2, and then we plug the meat probe in. Now all you have to do is sit back and have a nice cold frosty beverage and wait until the OG comes up to temperature. Now this is one of the coolest things I've seen on a pellet grill. The view of the fire pot shining through a Gorilla, and it's ultra neat at night. Now I've heard a lot of people comment that this grill is oddly shaped, and it looks like this or that. And I agree, it is different than other grills, but I call it a unique shape, not odd. Once we're up to 250 degrees, open up the OG and add the brisket fat side down. Now I do briskets both ways, fat side up and fat side down. On pellet grills, even though you have a heat shield, the part of the heat shield directly over top the fire pot is going to be hotter than it is to the left or to the right of the fire pot. So I like to put them fat side down to protect the meat on the bottom from overcooking and drying out and getting hard. Now as you can see, this brisket barely fit. Had it been a pound bigger, we would have had to bend it in half. But it's like this brisket was made for the OG. Now insert the meat probe into the thickest part of the brisket, and then slide the door shut. Well, before you try to slide the door shut, make sure it's going to shut. The sliding door is another feature I love. It makes it a lot easier to open and close while sitting in my wheelchair. Other pellet grill lids are heavy and awkward to open while sitting down. Now let the brisket soak up the smoke, and we'll come back every hour to spritz it. After the first hour of smoking, we spritz it with a combination of 2 parts beer and 1 part Worcestershire sauce. Then close up the OG and let it continue to smoke at 250 degrees. Now, I didn't want to bore you and show spritzing it every hour, but we've been spritzing it every hour, and here we are at the 6-hour mark, and we're starting to get some nice color and bark. Here's where we're at after 12 hours. Again, spritzing every hour. After smoking for a total of 14 hours at 250 degrees, our untrimmed brisket is probe tender and the temperature's at 200 degrees. Once we pulled the brisket off the OG, we let it rest loosely wrapped in foil for 1 hour. After the longest hour of our lives, it's time to see how this no-trim brisket turned out. We started off by cutting it in half. And here's what we have. We got a nice little smoke ring, and it looks plenty moist to me. Now the point end feels like butter when you push down on it. And as you can see, it's nice and juicy. Now as you can see, 90% of the untrimmed fat has rendered and has created an extremely moist brisket and turned it into a beautiful smoky peppery bark. With some fat, which I love and don't mind fat, and this is what will be called wet brisket when you order in a restaurant. Now this brisket is almost fall apart tender, but is still mostly sliceable without falling completely apart, which is how I like brisket. After throwing a couple of those slices of the point down my pie hole, I couldn't have been happier. The meat was super succulent, smoky, peppery, and just the right amount of salt. The point end is my favorite end to begin with, because it has a lot of internal marbling, and fat equals flavor, and moisture of course. So I was really happy with how the point end turned out. Now let's slice up the flat end and see how it turned out. Now to be honest with you, the flat end of the brisket is usually my least favorite part, but this was slicing and looking really good. It's nice and moist and tender and pulls apart with a slight tug. After enjoying a few slices of the flat, the point end is still my favorite, but I've got to say this is some mighty fine flat. Like I said, this is the third no-trim brisket I've done, and each time they've gotten better and better. But this one with the OG Alpha controller gave the brisket the additional smoke it needed that it didn't get from other pellet grills. And I always loved the KISS method to begin with. Simple salt and pepper was perfect with this succulent brisket. Like I told you in the beginning, it wasn't going to be a pretty brisket, but it was going to be a good eating brisket. It was moist, tender, smoky, and absolutely delicious. Thank you all very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, and share it with your family and friends. And I'll see you soon.